significant wins for the Working Families Party, which backed 3 challengers who conceded incumbents and endorsed 11 candidates who won for Democratic primaries for open seats in Senate and Assembly. Among those were Jessica Gonzalez Rojas, a Latina community activist who unseated Michael Dandecker, a 6-term legislator from Queens in the Bronx, Amanda Septimo, a labor organizer, clinched the nomination for the assembly seat of Carmen E. Arroyo, a 26-year incumbent who was knocked off the ballot after a court ruled she submitted fraudulent petitions. In Brooklyn, Marcella Mityanes, a tenant organizer who received a broad swath of left-wing endorsements, including from the DSA, WFP, and Ocasio-Cortez, defeated Felix Ortiz, a longtime incumbent who serves as the assistant speaker of the assembly. Ortiz, who faced 3 challenges, said the coronavirus pandemic off the campaign trail and probably affected his chances of being elected. I don't think I would have done anything differently other than maybe I probably would have campaigned more, but that's part of life. So most of these guys just seem probably pretty chill. Let's see who else. Big wins for the left. Jennifer Rajkumar, an Indian-American newcomer, defeated Michael Miller, who was elected in 2009. That's another big one. I know Jabari Bridgeport in Brooklyn's. Some of the primary races also exposed rifts within the party's left flank as well, interestingly enough, pitting challengers against incumbents that many Democrats considered sufficiently progressive. Liberal groups were not always aligned behind the same candidates. For example, in Brooklyn's 57th, Farah Sufrant Forrest, a nurse and tenant activist backed by the DSA, prevailed over Assemblyman Walter T. Mosley, who was endorsed over the WFP. For the most part, however, primary wins underscored a generational shift and really a political shift unfolding in Albany. So it's good to see that happen. Let's get into our next 2 stories. The federal police tear gassing a Portland mayor, and we'll talk about cancel culture after that. In what is a pretty objectively insane situation that is unfolding in Portland, well, we just saw the situation get a little bit crazier last night because as the federal police continued, really, frankly, their occupation, I guess you could say, in their time in Portland, they actually ended up tear gassing the mayor of the city, Ted Wheeler, last night. So here is a video of it. He said it was an egregious overreaction, as I'm sure he did. And now let's take a look at him. You can hear the audio of him, and he is getting a face full of it. Yeah, so you can see as he's kind of coughing there. Wow, yeah, so he's getting hit pretty hard with it.
I'm not going to lie. It stings. It's hard to breathe, and I can tell you with 100% honesty, I saw nothing that provoked this response. It's nasty stuff. I'm not afraid, but I am pissed off.
What are you pissed about?
This is a egregious overreaction on the part of the federal officers. There was nothing that I saw anybody do that warranted this reaction. And all it's doing, as you can see, it hasn't stopped the crowd. So they fired munitions, they fired tear gas. All it's done is piss everybody off even more.
He's right. It's only going to piss people off even more. That's all it's going to do.
This is not a de-escalation strategy. This is flat out urban warfare. And it's being brought on the people of this country by the President of the United States. And it's got to stop now.
Yeah, there's some people there kind of yelling at the guy there, just trying to be like, yeah, you better be out here tomorrow. Like this may not be a number one night thing, but it's definitely a very, very impactful thing when you have the mayor of the city coughing and wincing, as you saw in the middle of his own city on Wednesday after federal officers deployed tear gas into a crowd of protesters that Wheeler had just joined outside of the federal courthouse. Wheeler, who scrambled to put on goggles while denouncing what he called urban warfare, the tactic of the federal agents, he was more outraged by the use of tear gas, and it was only making protesters more angry. Again, and this is someone who, again, we talked about this yesterday with the video about Tucker Carlson in the New York Times, right? Like, think about each position here. Are the New York Times radical, leftist thought leaders? Like, sure, are they overwhelmingly, like, probably more Democrat, but is Antifa running and Marxist running the New York Times? No, definitely not. Just like, if you want to be reasonable about that, you could talk about Jacobin. Jacobin actually has Marxists running it. It's a very good publication, but it actually does has Marxists running it. You know who does not have Marxists running it? The New York Times. And you know who is not a Marxist and who is not a political agitator and who just a few weeks ago actually did end up using tear gas on the protesters? This guy, Ted Wheeler. And he is experiencing this policy, and he's not going to be like, and you notice what he said there. There is no reason for this response. There is no reason for this overreaction, what's going on here. This is a peaceful protest, tear gas not necessary. There's no need to disperse this crowd. There's no curfew or anything like that. And all it does is it makes people pissed off more and more time after time. The reason why things in the movement seem to be slowing down was because police stopped being violent, and they're stopping videos every single solitary day of police firing into empty crowds. There's a propaganda campaign. There is a propaganda push right now by some of the most right-wing forces that have great control over our media, over our government, over what many people in this country see and consume, to try and get you to believe that these protests, whether in Portland, whether it be anywhere else, are overwhelmingly violent affairs. That there are people, there are Antifa outside agitators waiting outside in the crowd. That is false. What it is a coordinated push by these people who want to see things go back to normal, who want to see cities kind of and things like that calm down to get you to shut up. It's a push to get you to be quiet, and is a violent push to do so. They are the ones using violence. They are the ones aggregating, and the people go to any of these protests. Look at any of these situations. There is no need for these responses. What cops have proven time and time again with what they do with these behaviors here is that they are unfit to wear the uniform. If they can't handle violent protesters without unleashing clouds of tear gas onto them, or nonviolent protesters without unleashing crowds of violent tear gas, or just clouds and clouds of tear gas onto them, they don't deserve to hold the badge. They don't deserve to wear the uniform because they are babies. Just because someone has been tear gassed at other points, and just because there are violent protesters out there, and violent protests have happened within the period of these general protests within the past few weeks, does not mean that every protest will be violent, does not mean that there are people outside there waiting to throw rocks at you the moment you turn your back. Like, that is not representative. And what they're using, this is an excuse to maintain control or reassert control and show the general public, show the general population who's boss. They're trying to reassert their authority because that is how they view the rest of us. They view us as sheep, and they consider themselves to be the sheep dogs, kind of guarding you and guiding you and pushing you in the right direction. That is who they're in this for control, and they're in this for violent control, because that is what they've had. That's what the police have had. This is what the federal government's had throughout their entire existence. And another thing about this is this is an inherently political play. President Trump is sending brutish, jackbooted government thugs, secret police essentially, really not so secret police, to these cities, quote, run by liberal Democrats, to violently bruise and beat up their elected officials and their citizens. That is what this is. This is a president going to war on his own country. And also, by the way, tear gassing the mayor. This is what it is. A president is going to war against peaceful protesters in his own country. There is no other way of putting this, and it shows you that, again, That is why this is why people on the left are so much more willing to vote for Joe Biden, because you have to assume, even if things really do get bad, he will A, handle coronavirus better, and B, not do this shit, because it is unbelievable. Some of the things that are going on here. It's got to stop now, he declared. But here's the thing. The Democratic mayor has also long been the target of Portland protesters infuriated by the city's police's own use of tear gas, which was persistent until a federal judge ordered the city to use it only when there was a safety issue. As Wheeler went through the crowds yesterday, people chanted tear gas Teddy. So, I mean, again, it's a thing that it's not just him. The president is sending these people in, he's sending these troops in, obviously for a clearly political reason, but it's not just the president who uses the tear gas. It is a police culture thing. It is what police do all across the country, because whenever they see whenever they see a protest, especially a protest that's inherently against them and inherently confrontational to them, they assume violence, they assume thugs, they assume crime on every corner, and that kind of culture makes cops more afraid when they have no reason to be, and just promotes a culture of fear, distrust, and angst all around. Like, that is what we see. That is what the president here has created with this, don't get me wrong, inherently political action. That's our video for today. If you liked it, please consider subscribing. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot thank you enough for listening to programming from the Spencer Walsh Radio Network. It really means a lot. So if you like what you're hearing, please consider supporting us by checking out our merch store available on Spreaker.com/TSWS. The link for it is there. Also, if you like what you're hearing, feel free to leave us a review on wherever or however you listen. You can do it on Spreaker by leaving a positive comment, and of course on iTunes by rating and reviewing us 5 stars, and on whatever possible program or site that you listen to SWRN on, leave a nice review, leave a good comment, let us know your feedback, and also if it's negative too, I always welcome constructive feedback. Thank you so much for listening, and now let's get back to your show. I did happen to come across a very interesting article recently that I thought may just be worth reading. It's about the subject that I really, and again, you may be a little bit disappointed about this, but I really don't think it's going to go away anytime soon, just because I think it is an issue that a lot of these people are going to want to keep bringing up, because it is unfortunately just being the fact that they are posting, and this is part of their life, like, they're not going to give it up anytime soon. And the they I'm speaking of is, of course, our wonderful American media, whether it's on the side of this isn't like our ideas are being suppressed or our ideas are not being suppressed. You can just tell that nobody plans to stop talking about it anytime soon. And I think it is definitely a very interesting discussion. It's a discussion, it's an issue, it's a debate where I have held I've been very, very conflicted on this. And what I want to do is read this article. It is in Vox. So I don't know how you're going to be feeling about that, but I do want to read this article. Check it out in Vox and get a sense of where I stand on it, because it is definitely more kind of the anti-cancel culture position, which I find tends to be held on average by kind of younger folks, people who are kind of less involved in the who are kind of new to journalism and more likely to be, I'd say, younger millennials and also people of color. So there is that. So without further ado, let's get right into it. This is not I do believe this guy is young, but he is not a person of color. His name is Zach Beauchamp in Vox. So let's take a look at it here. All right, so here we go. This is Andrew Sullivan. This is the headline here. I know I'm cutting it off a little bit, but it says the free speech debate isn't really about free speech. The debate over cancel culture is about something real, but it's not about free speech, he says. For weeks now, the American intellectual elite has seemed to be engaged in a bitter war over free speech. I say seems because the conflict is not really about free speech, at least not once you take a closer look. For the most recent flashpoints in the conflict are two high-profile departures from big publications, Barry Weiss and Andrew